Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another weekly edition of Market Rants Live. I'm your host, King Wabi, and this show is brought to you by Because Bitcoin. We're about a day or so away from the halving. BTC is sitting at 63, 64K. You've got a lot of clean narratives coming up. We have things like ordinals, runes protocol. That's something we're going to touch upon. You've got crypto AI, crypto gaming. One project that I'm really excited for that perhaps we can touch on the stream is My Pet Hooligan. Token is releasing today. I'm going to ape on spot, and I'm really excited for that. And I'm here joined by Trader XO. Hope you guys enjoyed today's stream. And of course, as usual, guys, go ahead and smash that like button. We've been waiting for this moment for quite some time, right? If someone were to tell me 6 months ago that BTC would be above $60,000 by the halving, I would have called you a crazy person. If you guys have tuned in to some of our spaces over the last year, I was of the belief that BTC would be around, 45, 40K. And here we are, right? And, despite some recent drawdown on the on-chain markets and altcoin space, we've still had a crazy run up year to date. And more than anything, I think this provides a clean opportunity, especially for some altcoins. And XO is actually named out ETH BTC. Him and his boy SC have been quite bullish on it, man. So XO, what's going on, brother? How are you feeling?
Hey, Wabi. I'm feeling good, thank you. Feels really good to be back on a couple of streams already this week. So this is the second one, and I've got another one next week as well. So it's good to hang out on stream.
Great stuff, man. So I guess we can touch upon some charts, man, and see how Bitcoin's looking up, and then we can dive deep into some narratives, man. I know you're pretty bullish on Ruins Protocol. We can perhaps touch upon that, man. So we've got Bitcoin right here, man. What are your thoughts, man? Weekly's looking quite bullish, and I know some of the lower time frame stuff can really shake some people out.
Yeah, indeed. Look, I think Bitcoin's had a fantastic run into the first half or the first quarter of 2024. And we are starting to see a phase of, perhaps a corrective phase, which in some respects, many have, been anticipating. We've had a fantastic rally up. When you look on the daily time frame, I think this is the one time frame where we have seen the loss of the 12 and 21 EMAs. So the question now is, look, what is Bitcoin going to do next? Are we going to trade back down to this 54, 53K level? Could it be the fact that Bitcoin prints another lower high into a lower low, into a form of consolidation? That's kind of the high time frame range that I'm really looking at. And obviously we can define more or less, a mid-range in between there somewhere. So look, there's two ways I see price, keeping it very, very simple. Major support down on 52K. Don't really want to be playing this level in terms of, going balls deep into spot. I'm just thinking of low time frame trading. Just have a bit of hesitancy because I think there's a chance we could reject from that 66, 60K level. But ultimately, look, I think if we can push back up above the 64, 65K hole, this particular level here, that may set up a move to continue higher. And again, I'm just keeping an open mind. Whichever scenario plays out, I'll be happy to trade. But ultimately, I think whichever way I look at the market, have I been trading Bitcoin actively over the last 4 or 5 months? Not at all, because I think there's far greater opportunities in altcoin. That seems to be where most of the attention is in the crypto space, especially on Twitter. And it's fascinating just to see how well meme coins have performed. Solana has had an epic rally, and we've seen, obviously, Solana shitcoins as well doing relatively well. So the question is, I think, moving forward into Q2, what's my expectations? My expectation, I think, at least for the best part of the remainder of April, is I don't think price is going to be going anywhere anytime soon, apart from possibly just trading within this particular range bound environment. Whether we get a move to the lows remains to be seen, but I'm fully open to that possibility. And I think that's just one thing that people have to be cognizant of, the fact that should price break down from these levels into that 52, 54K zone, how is that going to affect your portfolio? How are your altcoins going to perform? We already saw on the weekend with the Iran-Israel debacle and the the paper airplanes that have been thrown around from one border over the other. I guess we saw a fairly steep correction on altcoins, a 30-40% correction across many altcoins, cascading liquidations. So Is there still risk to the downside on altcoins? Possibly, but is that necessarily bearish? Maybe short term, for some people who may be uncomfortable in their positions, who perhaps haven't taken profit. But I think it also serves as a great opportunity for those who were prepared for some potential downside and really looking to be aggressive in adding to their positions or looking to scoop up altcoins potentially from lower down. So that's just one of the risk scenarios that I'm fully prepared for. And I've alluded to the fact on the timeline that any opportunities over the next few weeks from a trading perspective, I'm keeping very, very short term. The one sector, however, that does excite me is the BRC space, the ordinal space, inscriptions, runes. So I think there's going to be some real traction there in the next 2-3 months.
Yeah, I think it's honestly quite bullish, man, that we've had this price action going into the halving, right? I think the worst case scenario would have been, us being at 85, 90K going into the halving. Because after that, right, like it's kind of a sell the news event, right? Whereas now it's kind of like, I'd rather us be in choppy waters. And I'll be the first to admit it here, man. I actually think that break of all-time high that we had at 73K was a bit of a deviation and, a bit of like getting too ahead of ourselves, right? I know some people are saying that this time is different and what have you, but I don't think this time is different at all whatsoever. Like, I wouldn't even be shocked if all BTC does for the next, 4 or 5 months is just be range bound from 70 to 80K, right? And altcoins take the glory, right? Especially with things like runes and all that stuff, BRC20s, ordinals, and all that stuff. I've got 2 puppets. I really feel like selling those things, man. Like when it comes to NFTs, man, I'm sort of like a mid curver. If they go up in an extreme amount of time, I'm just like, bro, I gotta get rid of this thing. But let me ask you this, man, before we touch upon like other crypto narratives and all that stuff, man. How are you feeling about the price action going into the halving? Right, we've kind of been going down only for the last like 8 days up until today, right? And halving is basically tomorrow, right? It's in about 30 hours or so. So, what does your gut feeling say about the price action, perhaps for next week?
In all honesty, for Bitcoin,
yeah,
I just think continuous of low time frame rotations, low time frame chops. It's not particularly an environment that I want to trade, if I'm honest with you. I think, like I said, when I look at the opportunities out there, I'd much rather be trading the beta plays, which is altcoins to me. So I've not really been focused too much. The only time I've really focused on Bitcoin this year is to mitigate downside risk. If I feel that there's a possible strong level of resistance or price could break down, I will then start to, scale out of altcoins or hedge against that potential downside. So that's kind of how I've been playing the market in 2024. And so far, it served me well. I've had a fantastic run up since November, December, January, February, March. When the 2 sell-offs that occurred, one was back in March, mid-March, I was positioned for that to the downside. And again, over the weekend, I had my concerns. I pretty much stated my concerns very early last week. The week before that, we could potentially see some downside. I'd advise caution. I clearly remember tweeting that, and lo and behold, that's somewhat played out to an extent. I'm not fully convinced that the selling has subsided here, given where Bitcoin is. So I think we are in some tricky waters. When you look at certain altcoins that have performed quite well, like Solana, maybe they could catch a bid from here up to 160s, 170s, but then it's a question of, is that going to form a lower high? Again, a lot of questions that I don't have the answers to. And I'm not trying to guess what the market does next. And I've talked about this in the past. Trading for me is not about guessing what the market is going to do. Are we going to go above 70K in the next 2-3 months? Are we going to go to 40K? It doesn't really matter to me. I think what matters is which levels do I want to trade? Where are my invalidations? And for me, it's a mindset of being reactive at those key levels. And that's kind of my approach to Bitcoin. I'm not looking for these big targets to the downside or to the upside because they're not really actionable for myself. Maybe other people, maybe investors who want to buy and hold Bitcoin, that's fair enough. But like I said, I'm primarily here to take on trades, rotate out of one sector, go into another sector, and so forth.
So we've got one comment, a super chat from Remy the Whippet. Yo, Trader XO, got in heavy on Movie. I remember you mentioned your bullish case on Movie, the devs, etc. Can you elaborate on why you're bullish on Movie? Thanks.
Movie, I guess, just the whole. I mean, Bitcoin. The whole Bitcoin BRC narratives, I guess. So, when I look at this from a chart perspective, it's not bad. It doesn't look too bad to me. At the end of the day, you've had this initial rally which happened in December. Now, whilst the majority of the market, in terms of meme coins and other narratives were catching a bit, this was slowly bleeding lower down from the highs of around about 37, 38 cents to 7 cents there. So fairly significant retracement of this entire up move. Here's the origin at that 7 cents level. There's a relentless drive up and a slow bleed down over December, January, February. Price has gone sideways in a range bound environment. So again, when we talk about context and environment, you've got your range bound environment here. You have a fairly aggressive trend to the upside. Okay, and then you've got the trend all the way back down again. Some form of distribution up at the top, very short-lived form of distribution. So anybody who's really buying into Movie appears got trapped, unfortunately. And then you've got this phase again to the downside. So, selling off, and here we are back in this, what I may consider to be an accumulation range where price is just consolidated. You can see here the bands are compressing on the dailies. We are starting to see higher lows form on this trend line. So again, for me, we're zooming into the chart. When I look at this, I just think this is a very nice structure to play with the narrative for the next 2-3 months, where I'd like to see a shift in terms of low, higher low, another higher low. Any pullbacks, hold as a higher low, higher high, and there's your shift in context, and you should see continuation higher. Where I'd be concerned is if price breaks back below this key level of around about 13 cents, then I think it's every possibility will probably come back down to these lows here. So for now, this is something that I'm looking to play to the upside. I'm looking to add on the pullbacks. I've just started scaling in 2 days ago. So around about the 14.5 cent is my average entry for now. So I'm not exactly up a ton. I am looking to build a position on any pullbacks, looking for that continuation at least to 30 cents if it can get there. But immediate term targets, around about 24, 25 cents. I hope that makes sense.
Brother, so let me ask you this, man. When we talk about altcoins, a lot of people like to talk about ETH BTC, right? And last bull market, ETH BTC bottomed right around the halving, right? I think the day of the halving, ETH BTC had bottomed, and we had ETH BTC make new cycle lows last week, and a lot of people, are kind of freaking out, saying that it's going to 0.3 or like 0.03, excuse me. I've even heard some doomer scenarios that like ETH BTC is going to go back to like 0.02, and
really,
it's some absolute ludicrous, right? Because some people think that like Solana is going to be the only L1, but we saw a couple of weeks ago, and now it's victim to this. Solana got so heavily congested that you weren't able to do transactions for hours, right? It had like 2-3 days where it was just taking a shitter. And what happened afterwards? Solana absolutely cratered. It went down 50% from its recent high. But of course, I know we had that rebound, but regardless, like, Solana is always going to be that Lamborghini coin where it's like, it looks so sexy from the outside, but when it's stress tested, you realize that it's made out of plastic. But again, maybe that's bullish, right? Maybe blockchain's going down, not having their transactions being pulled out. Maybe that's bullish, right?
I've said this before. If blockchains are going down, why are they going down? Because of high throughput, right?
High throughput, low latency, emerging tech, man.
So isn't that better than some Amazon virtual worker processing transactions manually on Cardano versus Solana? It shows real use case. It shows that people are actually using the Solana blockchain, extensively. We've seen a lot of hype on Solana. So to me, I think that's a positive. I think it's a really good problem to have versus something like a chain out there. I'm not shitting on Cardano by any means, but you get my point. It's like, well, that's a good problem to have. I mean, if I was, a founder of Solana and I'm seeing record numbers of transactions flowing through on a daily basis, it's a brilliant problem to have, because it's going to help you scale your tech and hardware for the future as well. So, I don't think it's a bad thing. Other people think that's fairly bearish. Yeah, it's probably going to impact price short term, but in the long term, it shows real usage of the network. So that's my sense.
XO, I see you have an indicator down below with the stock stock RSI. It actually looks in the process of bottoming, man. So perhaps ETH BTC could be in the process of setting up for a rally over the next couple of months, right? We've got things like Eigenlayer going live, and a few other things that are gonna really benefit like the ETH infrastructure, right? And we saw that in February with Blast going live, and ETH basically ripped face for like 35 days straight and outperformed Solana by a good margin in the month of February. So what are your thoughts on ETH BTC here, man, from like more of a higher time frame perspective? Because
from a macro perspective, honestly, this is something I used to cover on stream, that as a buyer, this is where I want to do my business as a buyer. This is not necessarily just on ETH BTC in itself, but market-wide strength. I'd like to see ETH BTC catch a bid, because I know historically we've known this for a fact that when ETH BTC catches a bid, alts generally do quite well.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I think the complexities of this market it's actually very fascinating. Whereas in previous markets, when altcoins run, almost everything run. When altcoins bleed, almost everything bleeds. In this current regime, it's pretty much like various sectors. 1 minute you're getting Solana running, Solana shitters, then you're getting meme coins running, you've got base chain as well, and then you look at Polkadot and AVAX, there's not really a great deal happening there, so it's very isolated.
Absolute trash, man.
But then I think at some point these narratives will eventually catch a bit at some point, maybe when people have overexhausted the Solana narrative and something else takes over, like AVAX. It remains to be seen, but I think that's great, because the fact that when in previous cycles, when everything ran, it just ran very, very hard. I think there's an element of dispersion. There's probably not enough liquidity. There's too many projects flowing out there. We know if you look at exchange listings, there's always an exchange listing every other day. There's always a launch pad project being launched on several launch pads on a daily basis. So there's a lot of altcoins entering the space, and I just don't believe there's enough liquidity to go around. So we are seeing these relentless moves up in these sectors that are catching a bid, and equally, as we saw on Saturday, when the sell-off occurs, it's fairly drastic, and I don't think that's going to be the only time that happens. I think that's going to be something that we will see occur again and again throughout this year. Maybe not anytime soon, but perhaps late summer, we'll probably see an OI build up, and maybe towards the end of the year, we'll probably see an OI build up. Who knows, right? But yeah, I think if anybody who is looking at this market and thinking, we are in a bull market for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 6 to 12 months, then I think what you've just experienced, and again, if this is your first real taste of a bull market since 21, what you've just experienced on Saturday was pretty brutal. I think a lot of people suffered some significant losses, but really what it should prepare you for is that, look, if this happens again in the next 3-4 months, how are you now going to prepare for the next event and the event after that? Because eventually there'll come a time where the big sell-off event will occur, and that will be the top.
Yeah.
How much are you?
No bounce. There will be no bounce, man. That's
exactly. How much are you willing to give back to the market? Are you really prepared at all-time highs, say in 6 to 9 months? Are you really willing to prepare to give away 40% of your portfolio in a matter of 3-4 days? And that's the one aspect that I see time and time again, where, having experienced it myself, I see people really not paying enough attention to downside risk. Every day I look at the screen, I'm looking at the charts, I'm looking at my positions, I'm trying to understand what is going to be the event, or which levels are going to cause downside risk. How am I going to position? How would I feel if in a week's time my portfolio is down by 40%? So you go through these different emotions all the time, and then you have to understand, all right, am I prepared to lose 40-50% of my portfolio? Clearly I'm not. So maybe it's a good time to hedge. What does hedging mean? hedging doesn't mean, take a delta neutral strategy or open some shorts or options. Hedging can be something as simple as, let me reduce my position and go back into cash. Cash is also a position as well. So, for me, that's the simplest form of hedge that I feel are the majority just don't do very well, unfortunately.
So, XO, before we continue, I have a favor to ask of the audience. Something is clearly wrong here, okay? We've got over 200 people watching us live on the stream, and we barely have 50 likes. Guys, we're going to pause maybe for about 10, 15 seconds here. We need you. We absolutely need you guys. It is absolutely critical before we continue the stream. I want at least 100 likes. There are over 200 of you here live on stream joining me and Trader XO talking all things markets. Helps out with the algorithm. Unfortunately, big tech forces a small channel like ourselves to really push those likes. Wish I didn't have to do this. Max says it all the time on Market Check. So I'm here to echo that. Okay, I'm here to echo that message. Smash that like button if you want to continue to see all this great alpha. Brought to you by Because Bitcoin, and here live on stream with Market Rants Live, hosted by me, King Wabi, every Thursday, where I'm joined by another trader, content creator, and overall market enthusiasts. So let's go ahead and smash those like buttons, smash, smash, smash. But we do have some comments here. Someone talked about Dime. It's so odd, man. Like, you mentioned one ticker and then people think you're going to hold that forever. But I think Dime did its job, man. That was a good trade from $4 to about 750.
I think, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
If people look at Celestia, this is a classic example, right? You caught Celestia at $2.
Yeah.
It went to $20.
And then it got crushed to $7. And I had to bid at that point. Like, I played it from $8 to $11.50. That was the yearly open. And I don't regret taking profit. And it's like, you've had all these altcoins and things like Say as well. They got absolutely crushed. And I don't understand why XO. Maybe we can touch upon this later on when it comes to market psychology, but like, it baffles me how anybody can still be married to a token. If you have a token that does a 10x on you over a short period of time, say a couple of weeks, regardless of the market cap, you need to rotate, because that risk of giving all your gains back crushes you, man. It's horrible. And at the end of the day, man, I mean, you can testify yourself with what happened to you in 2018. All that matters is how much money that you can realize, right? Not how many tokens you have, right? Because when you take a look at what happened in 2018, right? If you bought, say, ADA at like, $1 in early 2018, you gave all your gains back by the end of the year. So yeah, you could have had like, 500,000 Cardano tokens, but at the end of the year, you got absolutely crushed, and you had to wait quite a while for you to be back at break even. And that's the thing with altcoins, man. Like, we've got to be extremely quick, regardless of what the timeline says, or when people say, oh, like, you're selling too early, or, oh, you sold the bottom because price is 10% above where you sold, and then it gives all those gains back and then some. Like, altcoins are a very, very, very predatory game, man. And
I think the altcoin market that we're going to see and experience, if markets remain bullish, it will be absolutely ruthless and very relentless. Let me just bring up chart, but before we'll come back to ETH-BTC, but let me just give you an example, because I think I've talked about this so many times on my own streams that, guys, look, I think the dynamics are going to change in 23, 24, right? If you look at PYR as an example, oh man, I just need the chart with the most data. Let me have a look. Right, here we go.
I remember this token.
Right. So here's my point, and this is something that I believe that we will see, and we actually are seeing across many altcoins right now. Okay, this is the reality. and the fact is on the chart. If you see a price, okay, if you bought in at $3-4, and this is September, where's your all-time high? In November. Literally in 8 weeks, price has gone from $3 to almost $52. It's been a relentless fast move over 6 weeks. You really don't have a great amount of time to get out of the market and cash out, because when it does print these types of moves, one, you've got very thin liquidity, very thin supply side on the way up, hence you get these aggressive moves. And then if you've got thin liquidity on the way up, or supply side, and then everybody's trying to get out, who's left to buy? Everybody's trying to get out the same door. So you get these relentless sell-offs. And again, we look at the top here, this is December. So the initial rally started in September 19th. It topped out in 30th November, call it 7-8 weeks. Let's run it forward.
That's a story right there, man. That is a story. I guess the context would matter, right? That did come at the end of the bull market, but we saw the same case happening in 2020 with DeFi summer, right?
Yeah, exactly. But Wabi, the point I'm trying to make is, look, this is at the all-time highs in December. By the end of December, the first week in January, price is back at $12 from 52. And that in itself is relentless. So you've really got to have a strategy, not just really sell on the way down. You want to be taking profits on the way up, looking for exhaustion. And you have to remember that the more further price goes up in a short period amount of time, the greater the risk is to the downside. So, and even then, you get these aggressive sellers, right? And then people are waiting to get exit on a bounce. They're down 30-40% at this level here, or get out on a bounce. Well, where's the bounce? It never happens because there's too much sell pressure. So the point I'm trying to make is this is something that you should expect over the coming months, several months ahead, when you get these relentless rallies on sectors that have yet to run. This is what you're going to see. And I'm fairly confident of that as well.
Yeah, that did happen with ETH DeFi after Q1. And even with things like parachains, right? Like I remember playing Kusama, that ticker was KSM, and it rallied from like $4 to 55 in 2 months, right? And then after that, it basically got crushed against Ethereum for the rest of the cycle. Same thing happened with Chainlink and others. And, with altcoins, man, I think that's just going to be the name of the game for at least another cycle or two, right?
Indeed, yeah.
And I think the greatest edge that anybody can have is just be in contact with either a community or somebody that's been in the market longer than you have, right? Like just like having a network really really helps out, right? Like imagine trying to play this market solo and you had your funds on FTX and nobody was there to tell you like what's going on, right? Like if you didn't have Twitter, right, in Q4 of 2022, you more than likely got screwed over on FTX, right? That signal really started on things like spaces and all that stuff with the maxis, and yeah, FTX was a different story, man. But I guess we can touch upon, some of the narratives that haven't run yet, right? As we discussed earlier in the stream, we were talking about BRC 20s and ordinals and things like that, right? And just touching on some fundamentals, right? We were talking on a phone call earlier today, discussing how, all the activities that have happened on Ethereum for the first time since Bitcoin's inception, right? Bitcoin's been around for 15 years or plus. We're going to be able to finally, use our Satoshis to basically gamble with BTC being an L1. Of course, it is AIDS to trade on there, right? Like I got my puppet on Magic Eden, right? It's a bit different than actually like inscribing and all that stuff. It's basically kind of like using Ether Delta, right? But I'm sure there's going to be some apps that are going to create less friction. But what's your thesis on things like Runes Protocol and things like that, brother?
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting to trade. I think, look, there's going to be a new narrative, a new sentiment. And possibly we talk about Bitcoin being a store of value and Ethereum being the internet of money, right? Well, for the first time, well, not just for the first time, but look, we've seen BRCs, ordinals, inscriptions. For the first time, we could see a kind of a form of a new economy occurring on Bitcoin, where you now can take your Bitcoin and generate some form of yield. Personally, not something I would do, but I'm happy to play that narrative. I'm happy to trade the charts. So I really do believe that, look, we saw and I made a tweet about this. If you recall DeFi in 2019, that was pretty much the initial phases of DeFi 2019, but we didn't see much happen until the summer of 2020, which is known as DeFi summer. And I think, and I say think because I don't know for certain, nothing's for certain, but it reminds me of, if you go back to April 2020, what happened? Well, the Bitcoin halving happened. Bitcoin went sideways, and this new hot narrative called DeFi, where you can generate yield and NFTs and whatnot, really started picking up pace on the Ethereum network. Now, I'm not sure whether or what will happen with DeFi moving forward. I was never really big into farming or yield farming. I've always been a trader, but when I look at where we are in this cycle, we've just had, well, we're going to have the Bitcoin halving occur. We know that inscriptions on BRCs and protocols like Stacks, really caused a bit back end of last year or at some point in 2023. I can't remember when. And I do believe that eventually this will have a much bigger wave over the coming months. Because if you think of the narratives, all right, we've seen meme coins run. I'm not sure whether meme coins are going to continue running. We'll have to see. Solana's had an epic run. Has that finished for the time being? Are we going to go through a multi-month consolidation phase for Solana? Maybe. I don't know. It could continue going higher. But when I look at the opportunities out there, I think the whole rune space, the ordinal space, the inscription space, that's the one that excites me the most. That's the one where I want to really start paying attention to that particular space and really looking at players on the secondary market, if anything. We'll take it from there, really.
Yeah, I do recall, the first DeFi wave in 2019. I don't remember the names too. We had a Chainlink.
Well, there's Aave Synthetics, Chainlink. I remember
Lens. Crazy, man. I remember that. Yeah. And also iExec, RLC, and Ren. Ren was huge in 2019.
Yeah. And then around that, you had all these different protocols being built to support DeFi. Remember DeFi, and you remember insurance with DeFi. Insurance protocols caught a bid, and then
there were a lot of insurance kind of things too, right? And
that's right. And
those tokens, man, it was like you had to pay, like, at the time it was like 5 ETH or something to have insurance or whatever that means on one of the lending protocols. I think the only thing that you were able to do in 2019 was use Maker, and you were able to earn like 20% yield on your DAI, but the supply for DAI was like super minimum at that time. So there wasn't really much speculation. So I can definitely see the parallels of what you're drawing to when it comes to, BTC DeFi, and comparing that to maybe how ETH was in 2019.
So for me, I think you've just got to really take a step back and think of the bigger picture here. There's going to be so many different opportunities, so many different parallels running on runes, on inscriptions, on BRCs, where you're going to see various types of, for example, if you remember Ethereum, and when predictions markets came out, insurance markets came out, aggregators came out, Orion Protocol, which was a very good one in my opinion from what I can remember back in the day. So it's not just about runes. I think it's about understanding what else could be carried across. Maybe we start seeing meme coins or memes coming across into the space in their own form on BRCs, right? So who knows? But I think you've got to look at interoperable projects that solve interoperability, projects that solve some of the pain points. I think they will do very well. You look at BVM. I think BVM is a fantastic project.
That combines all the buzzwords too. Modularity, man.
That's right. And I think when you look at what you can do with BVM, it's like EVM, but hey, I think the marketing has been fantastic. It's BVM, so Bitcoin Virtual Machine. So I think this will certainly one of the projects that I'm watching. I managed to slot in around about 480. Not a big position, but if there are any significant corrections on here, it's shown great strength since the weekend when we obviously saw the pullback on altcoins. I think this only pulled back from 5 to around about 470, and it's trading fairly well. Maybe it catches a bit over the coming weeks and months. Maybe it gives a nice deep retracement back into the 450s, but it's certainly one that I'm keeping track of, and it's certainly demonstrating great strength so far compared to altcoins that have sold off significantly over the last week.
Yeah, the chart does look good, man.
Another one that is Satoshi Sync. So just a heads up disclaimer: this is one that I invested in. I'm not obviously shilling it to anybody, but again, when you look at this chart, when considering what happened over the weekend, it's just an range-bound environment. And I talked about this on the timeline. Generally, one way to gauge strength of the altcoin market is when you see new projects list and the market is bullish, you're going to get something like a G2. So if you remember, Wabi, on the last stream, we talked about those initial listings. You get initial listing pump, you get a dump, and you get kind of like what we'd call the J curve. So this is something that I used to trade very often in 2020 and 2021 was these exchange listings, price lists, dumps, rounded pattern, rallies, takes out the highs, and then who knows, continuation higher. Jup is another example of that. So again,
there's not to cut you off, but there's one recent launch from a token that I've been talking about for 2 years, and it released a week ago. It's called Saga, and it's printed kind of like that same pattern, right? Like it has a lower time frame pump, and then it has that massive just downwards, and then you go into like a little accumulation range. And
so this is different for me, and this is exactly what I was alluding to, right? If this was in a bullish market environment, you would see that initial pump, then you would see a dump based at the bottom, and then a continuation higher again. But because this is just listed, and what has it done since listing? It's just been a constant bleed down. Yeah. All right, it's only been the best part of a week, right? But this to me is a classic example of what I was alluding to is signs of weakness in the altcoin market, just for the time being. I'm not saying it's going to be for the next few months, but it's an indication, and this was on the 9th. The caveat to this is obviously one altcoin which has performed very, very well upon listing was ENA. But again, when you look at ENA, I think initially there's not really a great deal of data to work with here, but it did perform very, very well, and it was one of the stronger alts until the market pulled back significantly over the weekend, and it's just been it's broken structure, low, lower high, lower low, lower high, and so forth. So eventually, I do suspect this will probably come lower down base. But you kind of get the drift, and I think that's just a good way to gauge market sentiment. I'm not talking about it for the next few weeks, but in the future, if you see a bullish market, and I think it's important that you track which coins have just been newly listed on Binance, which coins have been newly listed on Bybit or whatever exchange. Look at how they're performing. You don't have to trade them, but just understand what the market is doing out there, how the market is playing these newly listed alts. Are they fundamentally sound? Because if they fundamentally sound like Saga XYZ, why is it selling off then? So just food for thought there. A final example is NGL. You and I were fairly bullish on this when this came out. It did really well. So here's an example of an altcoin that launched in March, pretty much towards that. I think Bitcoin peaked at $73,000 in around about the 12th or 13th of March. Shallow pullback. There's initial listing pump to 188, pulls back to $1.30. Where does it go? It gives a 100% move to the upside. What has it done since? Just slowly started bleeding down. So again, this is indicative of market strength, but Saga XYZ is indicative of a very good project, but it can't seem to catch a bid just yet. So just my 1 cent.
Yeah. I guess those are just some of the altcoins that are just so tied neck and neck with ETH BTC, right? And Dime, dude, what a shit show. I'm sorry to say that, but I don't regret selling that thing. I really don't, man. And we did have some of the leaders from that project talk about price, and whenever a founder complains about price, tends to be a local bottom, man. So I saw that.
You're saying this is the local bottom here?
I mean, bro, dude, when I had SZ on in late February, we were talking about Dime, and he's like, I missed it. But, if we end up getting, like a price below listing price, maybe if there's a hack or something, he was describing it, I would get in. And I think I mean, I don't want to show anybody's bag here. I hold 0 dime, but in my opinion, dude, like, if I had no bias and I saw a chart like Dime and I'm like, bro, if Celestia does good, this thing is probably going to do good, I'd probably get into it. But me, just from like a risk management perspective and OPSEC, the way, founders handle themselves, I'd rather just buy TIA and not fuck around with any derivatives, especially when it comes to these VC tokens that are just so relentless. And I mean, Excel, whenever you have founders from a project complain about price or talk bad about other projects, the market quickly prices them out in regards to outperformance against the majors, right? So it's like,
Look,
why am
I
I
mean,
going to buy this derivative if I can just buy, the original thing, right?
Wabi, I'm not gonna lie. I love it when coins do this type of shit. These are new shiny coins that have come on the market, and the first thing they're doing is they're bleeding, and that's what I like the most. Because why? Because it's opportunity to the upside. So if these shits can keep bleeding lower down over the next few weeks, I'll be happy because eventually,
Happy days, man. Happy
happy
days.
days, man.
That's right. Happy days, level to level.
You fucking cunt.
I had to say it, man. Level to
Yeah.
level. Happy days.
There's quite a few people who say that, actually. It's not just me, so there you go. But look, if people want to, make of it what they want, that's all good by me. Level to level, matey. Level to level.
Let's go, man.
Yeah. So look. At the end of the day, it's like you look at, say, this up 21 cents, falls flat on its ass up 9 cents, gives you a 10x move to the upside, right? Brilliant opportunity. So, and I think Sui was another one. Everybody's talking about parallelization. Nobody has a fucking clue what parallelization is. Obviously, I understand what it is, obviously, coming from a tech background. But again, relentless 140 all the way down to 35 cents. What are we looking at in terms of drawdown, right? If you look at this,
that is brutal, bro.
So anybody who's bought this on the listing, thinking, "Oh, this is going to pump on listing," you got in at $1, and if you've held your back down, well, no comment. But that's the 76% drawdown from these recent highs or listing, and then you've got a 10x to the upside. So again, that's why I just look at alts like Saga. And can you tell us a bit more about Saga, because I know that's something that you mentioned on my stream.
So
what does it do? What is it about?
Yeah, so basically they're like a modular blockchain focused on gaming. And the way that AVAX uses subnets, Saga uses this thing called chainlets, but the chainlets are secured by the Saga token. So if you want to build on Saga, you actually need to buy the Saga token. And it basically creates like a supply squeeze, right? And as the ecosystem develops, the Saga token is going to be more in demand, right? So it's basically mitigating selling once the actual ecosystem is built out, right? And they've partnered up with Prime, which is one of my biggest holds in my portfolio.
What does Prime do?
They're basically just using AI agents for their gaming infrastructure. They have a card game. They have I think they have like a first person shooter. They have a huge upgrade coming up called Colony. It's basically another gaming L1, right? Kind of what like Illuvium wanted to do, but they're using AI agents to structure everything and all that stuff. And they've been around for quite a while. And I've had this. It's probably like one of the tokens that I literally just like bought last year and just have not touched at all whatsoever. Yeah. But with Saga, yeah, they've partnered up with them. They've partnered up with Matic and a few other people as well. And Jump Crypto is involved in the project. So
did you say Pump Crypto or Jump Crypto? I'm joking.
Jump. So I'm comparing Saga. I mean, I'll say this live on the stream. I think you can compare Saga to maybe something like Say, right? It kind of had the same thing, right? Released, huge pump, it gets listed on a bunch of centralized exchanges. You have Jump on the cap table, goes down 50, 65%, does nothing for a bit, and then just melts face, right? Because I do believe that like gaming is going to catch a bid. And if there's any like, true gaming infrastructure with a team that's been in the space for years and years, like Saga has, I think, brother, if you see a 2 handle on Saga, And that's a clean 5x in my opinion. Not that much off the old all-time high, which is about, just under $8. If you want to be conservative and say maybe Saga does like a 2x from its previous all-time high, that would put Saga at like, $16. That's a clean,
I've got it.
4x from here. So
All right, let me start ask you some questions from an audience perspective.
Yeah.
Real talk. The FDV is at 3 bill, 3.3 bill. The market cap's at 300. You probably know the vesting schedule better than me, and we will talk about that. But in terms of, say, for example, if Saga, let's just say the tokens are locked for the next 12, 18 months, right?
Yeah.
So there's no real supply risk or supply coming onto the market that's going to tank the price. Let's just assume this does go down to that 200 mil market cap level. And let's just assume that the supply coming onto the market, there's no real supply coming out for the next 12 months. And we're in a bull market. Where do you see Saga going from a price perspective?
Probably,
and again, I'm just being realistic. If we get the 2 handle, do you think this goes back to 10, 12, 15?
Probably a clean 10x, just like most of these VC tokens, right? A clean 1,000% gain. And it's being conservative, right? The market loves to throw these plays at you. And I think it's really all the same trade, right? Whether you're looking at Saga, whether you're looking at NGL, I think it's really all the same thing. And we saw Say and Sui, go back and forth with each other, right? That rotation was absolutely sick. If you were behind the screen from November to February, right? November 23 to February of this year.
Okay, talking about rotations. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off. Talking about rotations, what's a project that you would liken to Saga, which could perform or move in tandem with Saga?
I would say probably NGL, because I know they're doing some things like in the NFT space, the meme space, and things like that, right? Kind of like very similar infrastructure. And the thing with these 2 projects is that like their token is actually necessary for the ecosystem to progress. And really like I know like my portfolio is heavily dominated in meme coins and AI, but I know for a fact that at some point I know the VC tokens are going to run, and it happens every single year. You always have these rotations quarter by quarter, right? Like memes didn't really do much. Outside of Solana, right? Memes didn't really do much at all for the second half of last year, right? So I think at some point, VC tokens will probably rally, but it's really reliant on Bitcoin, right? That's the caveat, right? You need BTC to perform more than anything.
So so let me just have a quick look at this. So I'm looking at Sui retraced 70% from its initial candle close, 75%. Okay, and then we'll look at Say. Let's have a look at what Say did upon listing, and then I'll probably touch upon how I would play these moving forward. So if you look at Say from its initial candle close, it retraced. Let's have a look. 55%. So again, if we look at Saga, let's just say ballpark average between 55 and 75. Let's just go for 60 cents. You're looking at 74 gets you down to just below $2. So again, that $2 handle is coming at 70%, 65%, $2.65. So the way that I would play this then, moving forward, it's very, very simple in the sense where just using a basic set of moving averages, like I did with Say, like I did with Sui. Starting off in the 4 hour, you look at the 4 hour. Is there any compression of the bands? No, there isn't. Let me just get rid of this first. So there's no compression of the bands, right? In fact, let's just do it in Sui. This is probably going to be a better example. You look at let's just go to the daily. Okay. So you look at the dailies here. Okay, you got the 12 and the 21. Where does it bottom? When you see compression of the bands forming, and then you get the bull signal. Okay, so even if you just go down to the lower time frames, really I would start on the lower time frames with charts that have less data, and then flick on the high time frame once more data develops. So if you look at the 12-hour, you'll notice that the 12-hour did attempt to get back above, but the key here, the key thing to note, and this is very important, if you look at the bands, there's no real compression of the bands. Look at the distance between the two. So it's quite often that these attempts to break out fail. Okay, now you do have a form of compression here, but you've got an easy invalidation below 60 cents, and it breaks down, continues to break down. Okay, so if you look at this structure, lower high, lower low, lower high, and so forth, the trend is to the downside. You can even throw in a bloody high time frame trend line until you get that break. Once you get that break, wherever it is, let's just smack it on there. There's your break. There's your flick onto the bull. Okay, so if we just mark this area out, let's just circle it. So that's the first time that we see price print a continuous of a lower low, lower high, pullback, higher high. You've just broken structure. You want to be buying that pullback. So they're the two circles. Now, if you go into the daily time frame has also got you. Look at the compression of the bands, the narrowing of the bands, compression. Look at the volatility of the candles. You've got candles printing fairly large, okay? Daily true ranges are fairly decent, but look at the size of the candles here. A lack of sellers in the market. Okay, market sellers are fading. They're worn out, they're distressed, and then eventually price. Look at the volume or the candle sizes on the way up, and eventually you get that range-bound environment into a trend up, and that's kind of what you want to be looking for on these exchange listing plays. So I tried to do it. Dime was a great example of one that went wrong, okay, because we still had decent bullish sentiment in the market. I was buying $5. The minute we lost $5 and went down to $4.90, that was me out of the market at this low here. At that point, you've got to get out of the market because it's tried to test these lows several times, and the minute you break below it, underside reject, and it's rolling over. Look at the bands as well. The 4-hour, that's of course a concern. So sometimes we won't always nail it the first attempt, but now moving forward, I'm just looking for some form of bottoming process. But when I look at the higher time frame, look at the 12s, the 12-hour time frame, not great. Look at the daily, not great. Okay, so I really need to see something reclaim this particular level to even think about trading this again. So this has now fallen off my radar, but that's kind of how I would play these newly listed shiny coins that have come into the market, which for me, I'm not touching just yet.
Yeah. And more than anything, man, it's really all about catching the meat of the move, right? Once I would rather at this point, I'd rather be late to the party, but know what kind of music is playing rather than, just blindly aping a new launch, right? And I think there's a time and a place for all that stuff, right? Like with Celestia, the context was that Bitcoin had broken out of a 2-year range, and you have this hot new ticker, which, by the way, Celestia actually released at a circulating market cap of like 200 million. And that to me was like a severe mispricing during that time period. So to me, it made sense, right? Yeah. And now it's kind of like you just have to be quick on your feet with these new launches because they've, as we've discussed here on the stream, right, they tend to have the initial listing pump, some distribution, and then it's just hell after that point, right? So XO, what about let's touch upon some other sectors too, right? How are you feeling about the AI sector? I know you're pretty big on PAL.
I mean, yeah, big on PAL in the sense where it's performed very, very well for me. So if you look at what PAL has done, then you've got to identify other projects in the AI sector that could go on to pull similar moves, or at least a 10x. The way I look at it, I look at sector strength from a momentum perspective, but when I see charts like this, like Saga XYZ, when I see Dimension, this is my real focus. Like, I want to latch onto these because these are going to give you, those 5-10x's with high conviction. You saw that with Celestia. You did that with Aptos, right?
Aptos is electric chair, man. When I see Aptos, brother, and that price action rallying from like $5 back to 20 in a matter of weeks, and then just instantly nuking 60%, dude, that's a crime, dude. That chart, bro, like that. It's one of those things, dude. It's like, we're about to break the all-time high. We're about to break the all-time high, and it's just like, nope. Just
Indeed.
Tomfoolery, man. Tomfoolery. But I remember
Yeah.
talking about this last year. If you remember that,
Yes, I do. Yeah.
of last year, that was like probably one of the best trades to start off the year last year. But I remember you came on the stream on our spaces, and you're like, brother, man, it's topped out here, man. I know you don't like the tech. What are we even talking about here? Arbitrum. Oh my god, Arbitrum.
What do you make of Arbitrum? This is really interesting, that the fact that it's actually come all the way back down to this range cycle lows. What do you make of it? There was so much hype in 2023 behind Arbitrum, right? And I think it's been a big letdown, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, man. I didn't really play Arbitrum, dude. I did for like a multi-week swing last year when the token came out and some of the ecosystem plays, but I feel like it's just one of the biggest disappointments in the space because like at this point, dude, they're just trying to copy Solana culture and all that stuff. And it's like you can't go from a product that talks about how you're the future of finance and releasing all these complex protocols that nobody really even knows what they're even talking about, right? Because it's all scripted, right? Most of these projects, they give a script to their employees that graduated from Waterloo or like an Ivy League university. They give it to some kid who's like 20, 21 years old, who's like a prodigy. And he's like, look, you have to say this and this and just roll with it. Somebody's going to understand. And it's like, nobody really knows what a layer 2 even is. A scaling solution for what? Ethereum is still, pretty high when things get busy, it gets congested. So I thought Arbitrum was going to be used for, everything we use ETH mainnet for, and it's not happening yet, right? The market decides everything, right? That's the thing. You can have your bullish thesis, you can be bearish also, but the market ultimately decides where everything goes, right? Especially when it comes to a niche industry like crypto, where there's a copycat of anything and everything coming out every single quarter, right? Just take a look at what's happening within the Bitcoin DeFi space. Now there's a ton of L2s, right? There's a ton of AMMs. There's a ton of ordinals. It's like you can throw a dart at 100 tokens and then go on the timeline and say you're a genius because one or two tickers pop up, right, that end up performing well. And I think Arbitrum is just another casualty in the space, man. A lot of hype, too much funding for nothing, really. So
you see, for me, Wabi, I look at Matic, right? With all due respect to the Matic team and the tech that they've built, I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to talk negatively about the project. I'm just trying to talk about price from a trading perspective, a narrative perspective. If you look at all the various L2s that have come out since, they've taken significant market share. And I think anything that's been around since 2018, 19, 20 has kind of had its glory days. And I wonder now, how does a project like Matic even compete with the likes of, say, Sui?
It doesn't. It becomes,
chain.
It becomes Neo all over again.
Exactly right. So, and I think that's one thing that the wider community who perhaps haven't been around for the last, since the 2017, 18 days, because you and I bought Neo, it was hyped as one of the best things. It was going to be the blockchain of what, China, wasn't it, at the time?
The smart
Chinese blockchain, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a smart economy in China. And, the thing is, bro, like the founder, Dong Fei, he was doing a bunch of meetings with government officials. It was actually like famous in China, dude. Like regular people knew about Neo and they would have conferences and all that stuff. And it is what it is, bro. It had that lower high and it outperformed Bitcoin off of the lows. I know that much. Neo bottomed out at like $4, $5 in December of 2018. And I mean, from the low to the high, it still outperformed Bitcoin. So, but as far as like the broader altcoin space, absolutely not. And,
it's one of these, isn't it, Neo, where there's your high, there's your lower high macro, and then it'll probably do something like this.
Yeah. The euthanasia light crypto meme, right?
Yeah.
All the big circles and all that stuff, man.
Well, let's move on to ETH BTC because we didn't quite touch upon that, and I think that's a very fascinating chart for me. It's something that since prices up here, I sold most of my ETH back in 21 at 4,000 something. When I look at ETH now down here, when you look at the stock on the weekly RSI, it's at a very interesting point in the market for me. And I've been very, very patient on ETH, I wouldn't get bearish here because bearishness for me means, the lower this goes down, the greater the opportunity at this stage. However, I think being bearish here doesn't make sense. We've been bleeding since September 2022. It's been 1.5 years, right? You look at the stock RSI on the weekly, it's almost finished oscillating to the lows. And this is something that I pointed out, that I don't think ETH BTC is ready to take off until this finishes this oscillation to the lows and starts moving up. Secondly, you have this bullish divergence developing on the RSI. The third aspect of this chart is if you look at the monthly stock RSI is flat on its arse, right? So to speak, just like it was back in January, December, August 2019, January 2020, it's at that same level. The RSI is almost at the lowest point it's ever been at over the last several years, which is over here. So I'm not saying that this is the definite bottom. I think there's a probable chance that we could be close to the bottom here. And for me, that could mean something along the lines of, well, could price continue just ranging in here for the next few weeks? Maybe. Eventually, once we get this push back above this level here, this is everybody's getting bearish down here. I wouldn't want to be that person who's getting bearish here, because I think you've got a clear trigger to get into position, reclaim back above 0.05. You should at least see 0.06, and that is a fairly significant move as well, or would lead to a fairly significant move on Ethereum and probably altcoins, and we'll probably see Bitcoin dominance drop as a result of this move up because of the weighting of ETH and ETH BTC on Bitcoin dominance.
So there was a comment here earlier saying how ETH BTC might be similar to the distribution pattern that it had in 2019 before the breakdown in June.
It's here.
Yeah.
See, for me, yeah, possibly. But when I look at Ethereum here, let me just bring up another chart, and I've talked about this previously. When you look at, let's just bring up ETH BTC on the right hand side of the screen. Never use a wireless keyboard on a live stream because the lag is just really shit. When you look at ETH BTC from a weekly perspective, yeah, it doesn't look great. I get it. I can understand why people are thinking, yeah, this is going to go all the way down to 0.03. But at the end of the day, let's just zoom out for a second. If you look at where we are truly, right? Okay, so I am still hopeful. If you look at where we are from a macro perspective, if this is all accumulation from 2018 all the way through to 2021, 3 years, right? Could it be the case where there's your breakout into new highs? Could it be the case where all this now is a phase of reaccumulation? So we're at that point in the market where essentially we're testing the previous point of the breakout. Now, unless we lose this and close below it and we can't get back above, then I'll be concerned. But anything that's short-lived below the blue line and it reclaims back above and then reclaims 0.05, that for me is fairly bullish. But
yeah, I mean, we also have the halving coming up too, right? And what a better way for Bitcoin dominance to take a breather than right at the halving, right, and let altcoins breathe, just as what happened the last time, right?
Right, correct, yeah.
And if we can add some context to this conversation, right, in 2016, the halving before the previous one, we rallied hard, extremely hard going into that event, right? And then we had a sell-off, right? Whereas this time we're actually dumping into the halving, right? And I mean, we're about a day away, so we're kind of just chopping now, right, today. So, what's not to say the inverse of that could possibly happen, right? Dump into the halving, pump out of it, everyone's kind of lost hope. People are fighting over the timeline. I love this. This is a perfect sentiment check, XO. When you have people, mention a ticker that you talked about months ago and you stop talking about it, it's like, hey, do you still hold this? Hey, what happened to this ticker? What happened to that ticker? What happened? And it's like, what are you, the IRS? What are you talking about? Right? It's like the trade has already been done, right? So
absolutely. Now this on the left-hand side, we've got Bitcoin from March time 2023. This is something that SC absolutely nailed. He called the move down, called the deviation, called the rip up, even like mapped out before it happened. And I never forgot that fractal that he shared. And maybe I'm clutching at straws here. Time will tell. But it would not surprise me if we see several weeks of price action down here between 0.05 and 0.045, such that we see the sentiment is pretty shit on Ethereum right now.
Horrible.
Should it get back above, I think we're going to see a very fast move up. I really do. At that point, you've got sellers or anybody who's puked their Ethereum because they've rotated into Solana or other altcoins, and they see a reclaim. Then who's going to try and fade this on the way up? The momentum will drive it. Yeah, the momentum should drive it. Just like here, where you had an aggressive short squeeze, price rips up, and then you get people chasing the bid, causing further price expansion very, very quickly to the upside. So I do think that if we spend a few months, well, I shouldn't say a few months, a few weeks down here, and we get that reclaim, I think people are going to start piling back in. You'll see a very good positive sentiment shift. But right now, the sentiment is fairly shy for Ethereum, and for me, that's a good sign. Should this level trade between 0.05 and 0.045 with a bullish RSI divergence, with the stock RSI, oscillating towards the lows now, with a monthly stock RSI at the lows, I think this could set up to be a very good trade.
Yeah, you have a lot of people, pretty bearish on ETH at range lows, right? And we do have Eigenlayer coming out in a couple of weeks. Actually, no, I think Eigenlayer is already live, isn't it? Pretty sure Eigenlayer is already live. Like, I think they're already deployed on mainnet. So kind of like with the Blast unlock, right? Like, it took about a week or two, for bullishness to kick in to the alt. Yep. So, brothers, anything else that you want to touch upon before I wrap up here?
I think I'm pretty good. Yeah, I'm really, really excited about the opportunities. Look, even if the market goes to shit, it doesn't make a difference to me as such. As a trader, I'll just trade the other way. But I'm remaining optimistic. I think it's going to be a very rocky ride ahead. I think there's going to be what we saw over the weekend with a 30-40% correction on altcoin. It's not going to be the last. I think there's going to be cases where sentiment picks up again on altcoins, maybe after summer, and we see another wipeout in a matter of days. So they're the days that you just have to avoid. Do that, and you'll come out on top at the end of it all.
So it's basically what's happened every summer, right? We rally throughout the summertime, and then in mid-August we have that big drop, and then we usually have a Q4 rally and a little bit of a shakeout before going into Q1.
Pretty much,
yeah. And then of course next year, post-halving year, right? That's kind of when like the real fireworks begin. And XO, I'll tell you this, man, I don't think this bull market is any different whatsoever, right? Total 3 still hasn't hit an all-time high. ETH hasn't hit an all-time high. Solana, BNB still haven't hit an all-time high. So, I mean, unless Total 3, doubles from its previous all-time high before the end of the year, I don't think this time is any different. I was being clowned on by the melt-up guys because they thought BTC would be at 100K by now, 90K, 80K.
But could it be different? Is it different? I mean, it's a rhetorical question because we see money driving into Bitcoin via ETFs, right? So is it different this time?
In that sense, maybe, right? But I feel like the run has only been that is a nasty rejection. My God.
Okay, so what if this is the top for the next 3 to 6 months? Because there's this assumption, which I think is dangerous, that, again, I'm hopeful that we will see continuation in the market. But let's just play devil's advocate. What if this is the top in the market? What if price, right, prints a lower high, rejects, and breaks that, then what? And we get one of these patterns here. That I think that would crush a lot of people. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think in two respects, this is worst case scenario and also a brilliant buying opportunity. But let's not even contemplate this idea until we know that price is just contained within this range. So again, just something that's in the back of my mind. Equally, just how this is in the back of my mind as well. For now, I don't care about this scenario. I don't care about this scenario. All I'm interested is in buying opportunities at these lows here, scaling back in, consolidation, trying to continuation higher. That's my base case scenario for now.
And Exo, I'm gonna share my screen real quick.
Go for it.
Give me a sec. Share screen. All right. I posted this in November, and it was my nightmare scenario. So, all right, you see this, right? Can you see my screen, Exo? Can you see it?
I can, yeah.
All right. So I say, what if higher for longer?
Which could happen, right? Which could happen.
Double top. This was back in November, mind you. What if higher for longer? Double top-ish, 75K deviation on April 3rd. On April the 30-year anniversary of the Coinbase IPO, ETFs approved, Ponzi's way higher, distribution, shit goes down for 8 months of 2024. You guys tell me it's cooked. We do the all summer rally post-election, new highs 2025. I sell the Pico top. You guys tell me I'm done for selling. 2026 comes. You're all broke, begging for scraps at the Shoto. And then I put a meme of Max that we did on the Discord, and that is my nightmare scenario, man.
It's all good fun. It's all good fun, and I love it when people come up with these.
And it came through. That's the thing, dude. Like that was the local top in March, and things have gone down. I mean, for the most part, since then, right? So
I mean, we've all made these silly predictions, and I've made my fair few, and I've been probably wrong more than I've been right, and people will then hold that against you. For me, I think predictions are just tongue in cheek and fun, right? You know, at the end of the day, they're not really actionable. What is actionable is what's on the chart, and ultimately, that's what's important to me. I could say to you that I think Solana could go to $500. I'm not going to put a timeline on it. I could say to you, I think Solana could go to $10. I don't know. Yeah.
Not to poke fun, man, but you know what's funny? You know, I know last year you were, you know, not really like balls to the wall, and there was one guy, man, that like he just loved to clown people because they're not balls to the wall, and then he ends up saying that he blew up in 2022. It's like, hold on, sir. You were saying that you were buying the lows in 2022, how you're going balls deep, going into like optimism and other things. And you're saying that you blew up in 2022. So you were kind of LARPing and going at people that preserved their cash and didn't get blown up in 2022. And that's the funny thing with this radical community, right? You'll have people basically not even participating in the market. They're just there to observe and kind of just clown people that are technicians, and more than anything are trying to preserve their capital after going through multiple cycles, right? Like,
yeah.
I think like for myself, man, for this cycle, I don't really see myself applying the pressure as hard as I am now for next cycle, man. I think this is like the cycle to left curve as much as possible. And I think the dynamics probably change next cycle, right? Because what we're seeing, dude, over the last like 12 months is absolutely crazy, man. If they actually let us run it back all over again for the next cycle, I'd be shocked. But I'd rather manage my expectations and be pleasantly surprised, right? And that saved my ass in Q4 and early Q1 with some of these rotations, right? So no one ever went broke preserving capital and taking profits and rotating, right? I think the base case, don't get blown up, never get blown up, and like don't focus too much on what another man is doing with his money, because then that kind of just tells people.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I think people were as human beings, we're very quick to shit on others in this space. Like you take Capo, for example. Capo gets a lot of shit thrown at him. At the end of the day, he's sharing his analysis. Sharing your analysis is completely different to how you positioned or how you play in the market. And I think you put yourself in the line of fire when you come out with these wild predictions, which I think he's done. And I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do. We've all done it. I've done it in the past. I've been wrong. And I think realistically, let's just keep it real here. All that matters is what's in front of you right now and what are you looking to do next. There's no point in talking about Bitcoin could go to 30K.
Yeah.
Because it's not even below 50K yet. So why are we entertaining the idea that it could go 30K? There's no point in talking about Bitcoin could go to 100K by the end of the year. Well, it's not even above 70K. Why are we really pushing that narrative? But everybody seems to like that positive narrative, which I get. Positive sentiment sells, hopium sells. But if you talk about 30K, oh no, bear, whatever. So it's just, just be objective then. And for me, being objective now moving forward is we're in a range. We're probably going to continue in a range. And until one side or the other shows me where price is going, I'll decide whether to hop on board or de-risk. So that's all I'm doing.
XL, man. So before we close off, man, is there any new projects that you're looking forward to? Tokenless protocols and really just all that stuff, right? Something to look forward to over the next 6 to 12 months. You were pretty early on with Athena. You told me about that last summer.
Yeah.
which was that was top G stuff, man.
Yeah, Tensor was good as well. So I think Tensor NFTs will have a role to play in the future at some point. I think what we saw on Tensor NFTs and Tensor Exchange, you saw many altcoins pull NFTs pull a 5 to 10x on there. So I think that was the first wave. I think we see a bigger wave at some point later, maybe this year, maybe I don't know whenever, but I think we will see a bigger wave at some point.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, man. XL, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, thank you for tuning in. Go ahead and smash that like button if this is your first time, and also hit the bell notifications and subscribe button to tune in for more of our content. My name is Wabi. I host these weekly live streams every Thursday or Friday at 2 p.m. EST or 3, right, depending on the guest, where I'm joined by another content creator, trader, crypto market enthusiast, where we talk all things crypto market narratives, price action, and dubious speculation. So if you guys enjoyed the content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. And of course, we also have Market Check, which is our daily YouTube live stream at 11 a.m. EST, hosted by Tommy and Max. And of course, I also host our Twitter spaces, which are held throughout the week at either 2 p.m. EST or 4:30 p.m. EST. So go ahead and subscribe to our Twitter and our YouTube, and feel free to check out becausebitcoin.com for all things crypto market news, and feel free to check out our products, merch, all things like that. So guys, thank you all so much. God bless you all. Take care. May the candles be in your favor. And I just want to give a personal shout out to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Without him, none of this would be possible. Shout out to the big man upstairs. Without him, I am nothing. And I just want to show gratitude to each and every one of you that have tuned in over the last hour and a half. Thank you all so much for this.
Alhamdulillah, which means hallelujah.
Hallelujah, man. Thank you all so much for the support. I really, really love the enthusiasm, all the comments, whether it's good or bad. It helps out with the algorithm. If you love me, thank you. If you hate me, thank you either way. We're all here talking markets. We're all here talking, digital Pokemon cards, and we make a living off of it, right? We are the luckiest people in the world. If you have an internet connection, if you have a computer or a phone, you are in the top % in the entire world. So just take a moment today, call a loved one, tell them that you love them, and be grateful for what you have. And, if you find yourself having some shortcomings, in whatever you do in life, just use what you have and do what you can with it, right? So use your environment, to your greatest ability to get ahead in anything that you do, whether it's trading markets, going to school, a craft, or whatever. Just be grateful, man. I'm grateful that I woke up and got to live stream with XO. Right, we've been chatting for over 2 years now, and it's an individual that has really helped me mitigate my risk and has helped me be an assassin in these markets, preserving my capital. So thank you so much, XO. God bless you, man. And hopefully we get to catch up within the next coming months. Hopefully in the summertime, we'll catch up and see how the market's looking. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye. See you on the next one.